Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. On this episode, an excerpt from my Conversations with Commerce Next podcast, Lisa Perlmutter, Senior Vice President, Marketing and eCommerce at Brilliant Earth, and Laura Thomas, Retail Reporter, CNBC, talk about sustainability and sustainable competitive advantage. Laura and Lisa, welcome to the Conversations with Commerce Next podcast here, brought to you by ComEx. Nice to see you both.
Yes, nice to be here in person.
Yeah, IRL in person. Lauren, well, I should say welcome back because you were on a podcast like about a month ago. So, right. You know, the insights keep coming. Thank you for joining us.
More reasons to come back, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we've seen each other a couple of times, and so it's great to see you again in person. Lisa, let's start with you. Tell me a bit about yourself, your background, what you do for a living, and let's jump in and start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lisa Perlmutter, currently SVP of Marketing and eCommerce at Brilliant Earth. If you don't know Brilliant Earth, we are an ethically...
tell us all about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We're an ethically sourced fine jewelry company. Mm-hmm. Been around for 17 years. Personally, I'm a digital e-commerce marketing nerd. I've been doing it forever. And
now, you were at Sephora, right?
Sephora.
Now, were you there in the Calvin McDonald era?
I was. Right. We overlapped for a little bit. And, you know, he's doing amazing things at Lulu.
Yeah, he's done well. We were counterparts back in the late 90s in the e-commerce space. I'm from Toronto. We were from Toronto. So... but he's done well. And Lululemon, just such a thing. And I have a love for your category. I ran marketing for Pandora Jewelry in Canada, so I have some little knowledge about you and the category. So
good to hear.
How did you fall into retail? Was it did you always want to be a retailer? Did you always want to be digital? Tell me about when you were in the sandbox as a little kid, where you were always saying, one day I just want to be in retail. Or how did your journey go?
Yeah, it actually started in online travel. I've always had the travel bug.
So your passion was for travel, and then you wound up in that.
You got it.
That business.
And my passion was always travel, and I was at an online travel company, and I was at Travelocity before people were really comfortable buying airline tickets on their desktop computer.
Imagine them doing that.
And I loved it, and then I loved just the whole online kind of customer acquisition, customer buying, giving them the right information. Moved over to Macy's.com, actually, back when Macy's was really in a share shift mode, right? Really, really transitioning from a very large store footprint to really, really driving their digital business. And then, I walked literally a few blocks away to Sephora and started, and I haven't really looked back. The omni-channel retail model is just what I love. I think it's really interesting. How do you give customers the information they need, whether that's online, bringing in the store experience? How do you make sure that those experiences are somewhat connected? So now I've been at Brilliant Earth almost 3 years.
Wow, that's great. Fantastic. Now, so expand on Brilliant Earth a little bit. Stores, online.
Yeah, we were started mission-driven business. Started and that's what Lauren and I were talking about together. Started really about how do you change the jewelry industry from within. This was back in the days of the Blood Diamond movie, you remember? And, the founders really thought, hey, there should be no human suffering from diamond mining, and really founded this business on that premise. And since then, in addition to ethically sourced gemstones and diamonds, it's how do we think about recycled gold? How do you think about sustainability? How do we think about inclusivity? And just a really mission-driven organization, which you don't see that much in the jewelry category.
Yeah. Now, how does someone in your category, I've been talking about table stakes versus differentiators. And early on, your approach, conflict-free, blood-free, that would have been a differentiator. Yep. It's not really a differentiator much anymore. So how do you think of that in the context of the spectrum from being different, or from being, that's a table stake now, what makes me different? I still see it's a big value proposition of your brand, right? So how do you think about that?
I think that's a really great point. Yeah. I'm happy to say it's no longer a differentiator. I'm happy to say
I think we're all happy about that.
Right, on the natural diamond side, it's great that that's become table stakes. I would say as we think about how to make more things table stakes, it's differentiators now. We use 92% recycled metals. Gold is actually one of the worst things in the world to mine from the earth.
Yeah.
So how do we use more recycled metals, both in gold and other precious metals?
You think there'll be a day where consumers are enjoying manufactured diamonds? I mean, I also work for the shopping channel, which is like QVC North, and of course we had our own brand. You got an engagement ring lately. How you feel? Real or not real? I mean, you can tell the not real ones are absolutely perfect versus the flawed. Is there a movement or a differentiator? Like, how do you think about it, Lauren?
I think so, right? And you could probably attest to the fact that, that's probably already happening, right? You have some consumers that are totally okay with that. And yeah, so I feel like, maybe it's starting with that younger generation. And I think there's certainly a level of education that's involved. But yeah, I feel like
the rare earth versus...
I know. We like to offer our customers whatever they would want. Lab created, mined diamonds.
Right.
They both have a place in the ecosystem, we believe. Just, for the record, lab diamonds, they're actually made of the same chemical material. They're all made of carbon, and it's just how long it's been pressed and how long it's either been manufactured in a lab or the earth created it over a few million years. But, we do see space for both.
Yeah.
Right on.
We want to offer the products.
Versus, are there some, I'll jump in with a question too, like some companies, some brands, have gone all in one way or the other, right? I mean, you see some of that. So maybe the hybrid approach you found is the best way to go.
Yeah, we do see some brands will feature go all in on lab created or go all in on natural. For our customers, we want to offer breadth of choice, breadth of price point choice, by the way.
And look as well, and look and feel, right? Look and feel. Larger, more statement pieces that hit a price point that are different. All right. Let's talk about you, Lauren. Very familiar face, certainly to those who follow retail. You've done, as we've discussed, an amazing job following the retail industry. But tell us a little bit about your background, what you do for a living, and let's start there.
Yeah, perfect. Again, Lauren, cover the retail industry for CNBC. I've been there a little more than 5 years now, which is crazy. It just feels like a long time within the journalism world, maybe anywhere. But yeah, and so really,
can we call you a veteran retail reporter now?
I think like I am. I know I'm young. I may be young, younger, but certainly feels that way. Because you see people come kind of in and out, and there's a bit of a turnover maybe, and people kind of evolve on in their careers. But yeah, I've kind of ridden it out. Obviously, I got to know the retail industry and companies and kind of certain evolutions, prior to the pandemic, and then got thrown into that in early 2020. It felt like 2020 was the year of bankruptcies, which I know we discussed a little bit on the last podcast that I was on. A lot of distress and kind of companies finding their footing, and then 2021 was a bit of there had been that shakeout, and so it was like businesses maybe were back on solid ground. The consumer was back out and spending, and so now it's 2022, and are we staring down a recession? When and if that is going to come, and yeah, it's I feel for retailers and just having covered them in this period of a few years, and just like all the things, I mean, including you all, that you have to adapt, sometimes at a moment's notice, like literally, and now just trying to figure out what that industry is going to look like if and when we kind of go into this economic downturn for a sustained period of time. So yeah, again, going back to your question, cover the retail industry. It's a little bit of everything. It's companies like Brilliant Earth, digitally native players, and then the stalwarts like a Macy's or Gap.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure and hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss another great episode. We'll be right back with this special 2022 Commerce Next e-commerce growth show bonus episode right after this message. After 2 years of unprecedented growth, some think e-commerce has hit its peak. So what comes next? As businesses look to enter the next era of e-commerce growth, Comex serves as a guide to get them there. Led by best-in-class technology providers across the commerce ecosystem, including Bloomreach, Miracle, Cinch, ShipBob, and Avalara, Comex offers exclusive research, benchmarking, data, and more, empowering businesses to deliver a commerce experience that drives measurable revenue growth. Learn more at commerceexperience.com. That's commerceexperience.com. You were on the podcast about a month ago, and nothing's happened since then that I can think of.
Right.
Oh, wait. A few things have happened, right? So there seems to be, I think we'd all agree the retail apocalypse narrative was kind of misinformed.
Yeah.
It was more
overdone.
Though there was tremendous transformation happening. But now we see some, at least by value of the market, some digitally native vertical brands in the past kind of month. This is just a moment in time, like you covered extensively, and we see some shortfalls. And is there something else going on? And then I want to talk about the whole idea of when and if a recession.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to that. But what's your perspective on what you've been observing for the past month?
More recently. Yeah. I mean, it's so one example, and I don't know if you were referring to this story, Revlon, a big cosmetics giant, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy just a few days ago.
Can't get enough stuff to make our product, apparently.
I know, right. I mean, that was, to be sure, they had a lot of debt. They had their own troubles kind of on the back end where they literally just didn't have money to pay for stuff. But at the same time, these supply chain issues that the company was facing did really weigh them down. And so, now they're trying to restructure, and they've got some financing that'll help carry them through, and we'll see what it looks like, on the other side for them. But yeah, I mean, that kind of sparked this bigger conversation of like, okay, that happened to them. Like, what else could we see kind of transpire in the retail industry? I think it's going to be a case, as it always is, of winners and losers, right? There are certain businesses that are in categories. Jewelry, I feel like, has been one of them. Jewelry has held up so well during the pandemic, and now you've got the year of the wedding.
This has got to be the year of the wedding, right? This and next year, right?
Year of the wedding.
Yeah.
This got to be this year and next year, right?
The claim is the most weddings in 20 years.
The most weddings in 20 years. Well, we know what happens in 3 years after the most weddings in 20 years. So I guess you'd be thinking about that for the year of the baby boom, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, so categories that are holding up fairly well, and certainly you have this divide also of the higher income consumer is still doing well, or maybe better off than the lower income consumer. So watching that divide kind of play out and almost intensify, I think, is probably going to be a theme, from here on out. And the holiday season, I just feel like it's going to be every year. Every year that I've done this, I always think this is going to be like the most interesting, like holiday, most dynamic holiday ever. And then like the next year, it's
another most.
It always keeps getting more fascinating.
So I was talking to my first guest this morning, Sucharita Kadali from Forrester.
Yeah.
And we got to talking about a couple things. One of which was this: I asked her, "Are we talking our way into a recession?"
That's a great question.
Because the numbers, and I had the opportunity to interview chief economist from Deloitte, and I asked him the same question. And I said, there's going to be a recession. I mean, that's not an if. It's a matter of when and how severe. But he said, I don't see it in the numbers. And Sucharita was saying the same thing. There's a lot of talk about it. But when you look at the fundamental numbers of employment in the United States there's no employment, right? Practically, if you take into frictional. So what's your lens on it? I mean, it's obviously a part of the narrative and a part of the story, and companies make it a part of the story. Everybody's worried about it. How do we get ready for it? But is it just going to happen because consumer confidence just gets battered by the talk about tougher times ahead? Like, how do you think about that?
No, it's great. I know. I agree. I think there are so many different data points and numbers that you can look at too, right? There are dozens and dozens of surveys kind of on this stuff. I mean, you look at what I think a big thing is what some of the big banks are saying and what they're predicting. I feel like that's always been an important indicator in the past. I think it was Jamie Dimon kind of made headlines a few weeks back when he described it as this hurricane situation on the horizon, speaking to a recession. And I know that got a lot of pickup and people, paid attention to that, paid attention to things that he predicts, this big bank. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an economist per se.
Nor do you have a crystal ball, by the way, right?
Yeah. But the one thing I guess I'll say is, I talk to a lot of these retailers and executives, and it does seem like everyone has that plan in place for a contingency plan, so to speak, for if and when that happens.
All right, so. Lisa, let's get back to what you were talking about on the panel: sustainability and the role of sustainability. So, consumers, in my experience, have always had this difference between what they say and what they do around sustainability and green. Though I always would frame it, there's some consumers who make a decision, I call them dark green. Every decision is driven by sustainability, and on the opposite end of the spectrum is people who couldn't care less about sustainability. And that middle point has been moving towards concern about sustainability. In your category, where does my product come from? How do you see it, and how do you position around it carefully? And what are you hearing from your customers in terms of its role in the buying process? Talk about that a bit.
I mean, there's a million studies we could talk about. One of them is, 2/3 of customers in the millennial and Gen Z are buying only from brands that have their shared values, like their shared values, whether that be about sustainability or inclusivity. I can tell you that what we see from our customers is they don't just want, they're really demanding to know these things. Like there is a movement here. It's real. We're excited about it because we think it's the right thing to do for everyone.
Well, you've been doing it for 17 years, so you're
from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's also the right thing to do for the planet and the next generation and my kids and your kids and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I do think that more and more people, especially when it comes to highly considered purchases, and I haven't been in the fashion industry for a while, so I can't speak to that, but on the highly considered purchases, I think people are much more in tune and much more make final buying decisions based on that, even if it costs a little more.
Do you see that, and I've heard from other retailers, this moving point about maybe I'll spend $1 this year. I was going to spend $1, but I'm not going to buy 5 items at 20 cents. I'm going to buy 1 item for $1. Are you getting any sense of that from, like, I'm going to invest in other, because that's a very good way to be sustainable too. I'm not going to buy a lot of jewelry. I'm going to buy that one highly considered fine piece that I'm going to keep for the rest of my life kind of thing.
Yeah, we are seeing that. And, we see people saying, like, yeah, hey, I'm not going to buy throwaway jewelry, throwaway clothing anymore. Right. Like, I'm going to really invest and in things. And, something we're excited about doing is, we really promote circularity. So whether that means bringing in your old products and having them created into something new and beautiful using that recycled metal.
And do you have a program that facilitates that?
Yeah,
say more about that.
Yeah, so customers can bring in sort of items from grandma's, items from grandma's attic, whatever it is, in the fine, obviously in the fine jewelry category, and we can take that and buy that back from them and create something really beautiful as they want. We also really look at repairs. So our jewelry repairs is really thinking about longevity of a product, right, versus always buying new. So how do you just extend the life of products versus that was talked about this morning as well. Like, how do we, as retailers, shift and pivot? Like, think about repairs for longer term. Think about trade-ins. Think about upgrades, right?
And these things are good pragmatic traffic drivers too, right? I mean, they get people
absolutely
back into your brand because they,
Diamond upgrades. That's a great example.
Diamond upgrades,
right? So if you buy a setting and you love the setting and the design, later, a few years down the road, you want to upgrade your diamond. Like that's something I think is great as well. So
interesting. All right, last question, Lauren.
Yes.
I'll start with you. The idea that 2 starts and 1 stops. So you're a great observer of the industry.
From
right?
my point of view.
Your point of view. What from taking in all that, like how many conversations you have a week in the retail industry?
A lot of different people.
A lot of different people, a lot of senior levels, but also a lot of different moving parts. 2 things you would advise retailers, e-commerce marketers to start doing, and 1 thing that you think isn't working as much. That you're hearing in the market
right now.
Let's like getting ready for the holiday. I mean, we're now getting ready for holidays, Black Friday and the holidays, right?
Let's think through. I mean, maybe a start would be, this is from what I've heard, if you've got too much, you've got a lot of inventory. I was speaking to someone yesterday, their advice, and I think this is shared from other folks that I've spoken to as well, discount now. Like, kind of the expectation in the industry is that promotions are coming within certain categories. So it's almost best to just get out ahead of it, put stuff
July's a good month for that, right?
You've got Amazon holds it's made up manufactured holiday, but Prime Day is right around the corner, and I know Target and some of these other companies they always kind of match and do deals around that day as well. I think an opportunity there.
Don't sleep on your inventory, as the kids would say, right?
Yeah, just get out before it gets, it's going to get really messy, I think, noisy, and that's kind of the expectation as the year drags on. Again, in certain categories, I think where inventories have piled up, apparel and home goods are two good examples of that. I'm trying to think of can I skip to the don't? I'm going to skip to the don't, and then I'm going to come back to another do. I would say I've seen a lot of brands get into NFTs and kind of this Web3 world without really having a great strategy or a reason to do it, and having substance there, I guess. So
you must get pitched these stories, right? Hey, we're doing this. We're
right.
Cover us because we're doing.
Sure, and I get that brands want to be kind of to have a play there in this world, but I just think there's still I don't think you have to like rush out in front of it, so to speak. Like if it's going to be there, it's going to be there. So I would just from just watching different not speaking to any companies in particular, but I just feel like there's been this rush into that world, and it doesn't always make sense, right? So that's my don't. I don't know. My other do would be talk to me, I guess. It's,
pick up the phone when you call, right? Don't be afraid. Pick up the phone. No,
it's just always appreciate the transparency for sure. No, I mean I know I don't know. I think it's an interesting time. Again, there's so much going on just within the economy, right? And I think businesses are trying to navigate that for sure. But I think at the same time that there's going to be really interesting stories to tell around how companies do navigate that period of time rather than kind of going dark and quiet. And I get that maybe there are some obstacles to work through, but I just think it'll make for very interesting stories of companies that manage through it and that are better on the other side of it. So yeah, it's good. Hopefully a lot of good stories to be told in the coming months.
All right, Lisa, let's talk about 2 starts, 1 stop, and then maybe we'll talk about that. When do you know the sweet spot between do I play along with other promotions or do I let them have their own? That's a whole other.
Jewelry is an interesting category, though. I feel like for I don't know how many deals there are, and I feel like that's in that space.
Would you describe yourself as a everyday or a high-low retailer, price wise? You do deals to generate traffic and
we're not really a promotional company. We don't discount. We don't strike through pricing. That's just not who we are. Frankly, it's. Once companies start doing it, could be a race to the bottom. So
the problem with the race to the bottom is sometimes you win, right?
That's a fair point, but the bottom keeps sinking when you're.
Well, that's what I mean. You don't want to win that. It's a race you don't want to win.
Exactly.
That's right. So 2 starts, 1 stop from your perspective.
1 start. Well, since I was talking about sustainability and that's kind of core to who we are, I would say companies need to kind of large and small, big and small, really look at even small things. Every team member can make changes. I was speaking on the panel of it's everything from the paper you buy, is it recycled and recyclable, all the way to the packaging you buy to send your products in, the packaging comes in, right? It's the things you don't even think about that actually can be impactful, and forcing functions with the vendors you work with.
Get into that value chain and pull it apart and find those
and ask questions of the vendors and suppliers you're using. Really use this as a forcing function time, especially wherever happens to the current market. Yep. I'd say that's 1 start. The other start I would say is we're coming out of COVID. There's a lot of hybrid teams. I would say there's, I think there's still a good deal of burnout and still a good deal of what does a new hybrid work environment mean? I don't have a crystal ball of what it's going to look like. I live in San Francisco, and I don't think anyone's quite figured it out. But I would say, start trying to work with team members to see what's going to work for your team long term. I think. And really addressing kind of burnout and keeping the team members you want happy and engaged, and just focus on the team, and that's who drives your business every day.
And what are you going to do less of as you head into the holidays?
The stop. I know Black Friday's almost here. TikTok.
It's around the corner.
TikTok.
I tell you.
Telling me.
And Amazon's created an additional Black Friday, so we're thankful for that. What am I going to stop? I would say I will take one from Lawrence and add to that of just stop doing some things. You got never-ending to-do lists. Your team has never-ending priorities. Find a few and just stop doing them. If they're not driving value, they're not making your teams happy, they're not. Find them and cross them off and tell people not to focus on them and focus on other things. And I think we don't We don't do that check balance enough. I don't do that check balance enough because I'm excited by new things.
I was talking to Charlie Cole from FTD, and we were talking about priorities. And I'm a big trilogist. I like things in threes because, you're tempted always to go in front of boards and executives. Okay, here's the 7 things you're going to figure.
70.
Yeah, 7 and 70 things. But eventually, you if you kind of look back and you say, I'm never going to get quality progress on any past 3 to 5, right? If all goes well. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Well, listen, thank you both for joining me on Commerce Next. Wonderful to meet you both. And Lauren, great to see you again. Look forward to your reporting about another very busy.
No, I won't drum it up, until it happens. We'll see.
All right. Well, we can count on you. And again, for the retailers and listening, pick up the phone when you call and share. And thank you both for being on the podcast. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next Podcast, and the Food Professor Podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.